You need to have a lot of data from a lot of different sources, and that is, with the amount of moving parts that we have in our industry, pretty much impossible to do to do right in an easy way. So when I got contacted by a partner of ours, TD Synex, that they had a company in Denmark that has just such a solution, and it's really easy, and you should really see it. I was immediately intrigued, and that led to us being here right now. And since you're not here to actually hear me talk, I would like to give the word to Mikkel from BeWo to tell you guys all about what they do and how they do it to make the reporting easy.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Mikkel, and for the presentation today, please feel free to ask any questions you have in the chat, and I think we'll take it as we go. And turn, please interrupt me if if I don't see the questions while we're doing the presentation. But yeah, let me share here. Can you see my slides? Thank you. Okay, so yeah, I am the CEO and co-founder of the company BeWo. It's short for Better Worlds, and we are on this mission to help companies understand both their spend and carbon footprint at the same time. And we've built an AI engine of that, and we're trying to help companies understand if they're truly in control of their spending and they know the environmental impact of when they're buying or what activities they have in the company. And that's the exact topic we're going to talk about today. My story started about 5 years ago with my two co-founders. We're a startup of around 15 people today. And we've been on this journey to figure out exactly how do you solve this issue of tracking carbon footprint across a whole value chain, because there's so many things going into it, right? Our journey started the 5 years ago with a very ambitious company. They were actually a furniture design company here in Denmark, and they gave us the challenge to actually measure the carbon footprint of scope 1, 2, and 3. So the whole value chain, with yourself in the middle. You have scope 1, and scope 2 and 3 is external. So both going back to your supply chain, but also what happens after you have sold your product. And I've been chasing this solution forever, because what we learned with our first pilot project was that we could do it. We spent, I think, my co-founder and I, we spent around 500 hours trying to figure it out for this company, and we succeeded quite well, because they won the award for the best sustainability report here in Denmark, not only once but twice. But since then, we have tried to figure out how to actually do this, because some of the troubles that we went into is that tracking the carbon footprint and spend is quite hard. It's a lot of data points, and if you want to do it by hand, that could be in Excel, or actually in Business Central. There's a module for it today. It takes such a long time, because you have so many lines of data to go through. And when you're working with these lines of data, it's also difficult to understand, is my calculation correct in the first place? Because if I were to say, hey, this cup of coffee, it's 1 kilo of CO2 or 2 kilos of CO2, I don't know the difference, and I've worked with this for 5 years. So trying to figure that out is very, very difficult. And also, when you're in a team, you need to like categorize these into different ways of classifying emissions, and that's really, really hard to do when you have to coordinate which category did we use last time. So the whole idea that we set out with was that, what if we can let AI do the work instead? The AI needs to work on a data set that exists today, and it needs to be automatic. We're not going to interrupt business workflows or require to register new things. And that is the main challenge that we're addressing today. So I'll show you the process that we go through. It all starts with the connection to the ERP system, so Business Central Cloud. And our system will then extract all the purchase and activity data that is in the system and process it with AI. And we can actually go back in time and use all the documents that you have today. So it's not like it only works in the future when you started registering new data. We can actually go back. I think one of our customers, they go back 4 or 5 years. So they have this really cool history of what they're buying and the carbon footprint of it. And then, of course, we can intelligently monitor what's happening in Business Central. So this means that when you have a new purchase invoice coming in and you're posting that, of course, we're going to pick it up and we're going to calculate carbon footprint of it automatically. And one of the big pros of this is that we don't need to invent a new process. Our system works outside of Business Central because there are some workflows that cannot be done in a traditional ERP system. For example, working across a large data set over time. But of course, we can still link back to the ERP system. We can link back to the finance, so you know it's in sync. And maybe you have an auditor coming by someday that needs to see, hey, what you did here, does it make sense? So this saves a lot of time by having, okay, say, a methodology that works across the whole business and it works in the same way all the time. So in the first chapter of this presentation, we will be making a deep dive into some of the data that we look at and the spend intelligence that we can get out of the documents. Because the solution works on the same data set, and we have customers that are using it for understanding their purchases in the first place, and also, of course, tracking the carbon footprint of it. And what we're doing is that we have built an engine that can work with any type of purchase data that you may have. So it can be in PDF, and we actually scan it line by line, so we can get a lot of information out of these purchases, and we can actually start to track, for example, item numbers and price over time. So you can start to essentially know exactly what you're buying across your business. And this is both for the we can say the documents that are in purchase orders, but also the indirect spend that might just be posted to a general ledger entry that doesn't get tracked by the item number. And once we've picked up the data from there, we will actually classify it in some way. Because when you're looking at your data set, it's very important that you're categorizing it in a way that makes sense. So, for example, if you're buying three different laptops from three different vendors, it's important when you're looking at that data that is categorized around a category. In this case, we have the UNSPSC code for notebook computers. That's a really good way of categorizing spend. And a lot of the benefits that we see is that businesses can not only understand what they're purchasing, but they can actually use this information when they are in dialogue with their suppliers. It's a good starting point for having the facts right if you're going into that negotiation meeting and trying to get a better purchase contract. It's also very easy to react to changes because we're tracking every single item and we can say what's the price over time. So you can see exactly how things are changing, and also finding out if you are looking at a budget overrun in the future. And of course, there's also noticing mistakes. We can start to look at what was the negotiated price that you thought you were from the purchase offer, and also make sure that it makes sense in the purchase invoice situation. So for us, it's a lot about starting to ask the right questions. That could be asking your data set, where can I find the cheaper alternatives, or which prices have increased this month, or where can I start saving? And that's what we do for the spend tracking. For automating the carbon part, we're doing a bit more with the data set. So not only are we tracking exactly what you're buying, but we're actually taking that information and adding a carbon footprint to it. And it all starts with these line item data. That's what we're doing in the first place. You need to know what you're buying. You need to know the quantities, and of course the price. So our AI will go into every single line of purchase and it will extract the relevant information that we can use for carbon tracking. And this means that in this example, there have been bought some coffee beans, and the text in it says 1,000 grams. This means that we can actually use this information in the calculations to make a quick estimate of how much coffee have you purchased. So not only using the price, but also the amount and scale it with that. And that's what you need to do when you're doing carbon calculations is that you need to try to do the very best that you can with the information that you have available. So what we will do when we have a purchase invoice document is actually look for information that your supplier has shared with you in the first place. Because then you don't have to do your own calculation. You can say, hey, my supplier, they said this purchase was 100 kilos of CO2, for example. And this is actually the best way to do it. So in this presentation, I will also suggest highly that this is something that you start to share with your customers because they're going to be caring a lot about it when they are looking at optimizing their carbon footprint. But the next level would be matching the data that you have from the purchase invoice against a product-based emission factor. So if your suppliers, they have uploaded an analysis to a database of their product, we can use that. And if we can't, we have to go with an average product, so the activity-based level. In this example that we have here is that the line item says there's been bought 50 kilos of cement. We can then say, okay, it's average cement. It's going to be pretty accurate, but we don't know the exact type of it because there's no study on it yet. And if we cannot do any of these things, we have to go down to the lowest level, which is the spend level, which means that we'll be using the euro amount of the purchase matched against a product category. So it will always be a little bit higher, the carbon footprint, because there's a lot of uncertainty involved with it. So it usually is a worst case scenario, but it's still completely compliant for CO2 reporting. What our customers are getting out of this is usually a complete report of the scope 1, 2, and 3. So all of these both purchases could be your electricity, it could be your heat, it could be business travel, all the purchase goods and services that you have in your business. It could be fuel. All of those things go into a statement. That's the classic thing that everyone needs to present in their annual report or to their customer. And for us, it's a lot about saving time and letting AI do the manual lifting. Because I've tried myself a couple of times doing it by hand, and a company could easily have 50,000 lines of purchases annually, and just sitting in Business Central and entering this data would be 400 hours of work. I would estimate, which is 11 weeks of manual data entry. But instead, we can actually set the system up through the app source marketplace on Business Central, and we can follow along as you enter new purchase invoices without any interruptions. And that's the basis of the system. But I would say that most of our customers, they take it one step further. So they use it as a way to profile themselves, and they use it usually in visualization tools such as Power BI or similar. And that's because like a general CO2 statement is good, but if you actually want to do something about it, you have to get it into the departments. So finance might have their global overview of the company, and your employees, they might have an overview of a specific site, or it could be just a business travel dashboard or similar. The next initiative is that our customers, they also use the data to provide to their own customers. So every time they have a sales invoice, they probably should be sharing this information too. And lastly, it's a really good way to collaborate with your suppliers because we can identify exactly which suppliers are the most important ones in your supply chain and probably the ones that you should focus on. And we see a lot of really good examples of how CO2 becomes a strategic element in the customer relationship. For horticulture, I think it's very important to track something like carbon per site or per square meter, um, or just per product that you're selling. That's usually the things that people you would need to communicate forward to your own customers. And I think that's the overall theme of all the customers that we're working with across different industries is that they all see ESG as a strategic element in their business. It could be, for example, the IT consultancy group, the Change Group here in Denmark. They're providing a carbon footprint to their customers on their project level, and also, of course, using it to identify exactly how they can reduce their carbon footprint across the company. It could be the construction company that looked at all of their purchases, and they have now implemented a procurement policy for the most important products so they can start to reduce the emissions where it matters. Or it could be our restaurant chain that just knows that they need to steer towards carbon neutrality, and they're using our tool and data to guide that strategy. So you might be thinking, how do we get started? It's actually not that difficult, and we can actually show what we can do in about in a meeting. So in this meeting, we would be connecting to the Business Central instance by installing the app, and the app itself doesn't really change how Business Central works. It just makes sure that we can connect to it and get the right information from the right tables. And then you would go over into our platform where we will set up the integration for the first time. And this is a one-time thing, and it's usually about half an hour where we have different discussions of how to configure this integration. I think the record for it right now is 13 minutes, so it can definitely be done very quickly. In this discussion, we will be talking about which companies do you want to extract data from. You might have subsidiaries all over the world, and it makes sense to get data from all of them. And then also about which time period should we have data from. When you're reporting on carbon footprints specifically, you need to put your report into buckets of financial years. So it would make sense to click the different financial years on. And lastly, the way that we qualify the data that we look at is the expense accounts. So we will be going through the chart of accounts and enabling the exact accounts that make sense so we can start to extract the right information. We don't look at sales data or payroll or anything else, only the purchases and spend. And that's how we create the exact right foundation for actually using AI in a smart way. In a sense, if you're looking at what Microsoft is doing and all these agents coming out, I think our software is a very, very specific one for tracking spend and carbon.